I read about the concept of amateur radio while at school in the 1970s from an astronomy book. It was on the discovery of radio waves from outer space by Carl G. Jansky, a radio amateur, using his directional 20-meter antenna. This discovery later led to the development of radio telescope and radio astronomy. Just looked up the reference for his original publication now and found it in the Proceedings of the Institute of Radio Engineers 1932. At the time, I never knew that there were radio amateurs right here in my place as well. It was later when I was at college that an article on ham radio in the local newspaper which caught my attention and introduced me to shortwave listening. At the time, I started tuning into ham radio stations in my home radio at 7 MHz, which I later used as a receiver during my life as a radio amateur. Some of the prominent stations were VU2TG, Guhan from Kottayam, Kerala, India, and VU2JN, Professor Jayaraman. There were a few stations on single sideband SSB, which I could not listen at that time because I did not have a beat frequency oscillator BFO, which was needed to introduce a carrier to make SSB stations intelligible on an ordinary radio. My mentor at the time was VU2BY Karan from Kozhikode itself, but I could not master Morse code needed to pass the Amateur Station Operator Certificate ASOC examination at that time. After my graduation, I came back to the hobby under the guidance of VU2NYR Narayan and mastered Morse code. I took the ASOC exam held at Kochi and passed grade 1. Another long wait followed for receiving the license and call sign VU2JFP. It was in mid-1980s that I received my call sign. At that time, a QRP designed by VU2VW and Vasant was very popular, and I homebrewed that solid-state QRP and came on air with phone guidance for the first contact from VU2NYR on CW. Later, AM mode was added and I was regular on 7 MHz, checking into CharminarNet at 7080 regularly. As I gained more experience in hobby electronics, I ventured into homebrewing a vacuum tube QRO with 3x807 obtained from an old radio shop in the city. At that time, high-power RF transistors were not available and there was no chance of homebrewing a solid-state QRO. The QRO opened my world to DX. I could contact several countries on CW and few countries on AM. At that time, contacting WLAND USA was considered to be the most tough one for this region on 7 MHz. We had only a short time window in morning and evening when 40-meter band opened to WLAND. I still remember that my first W contact was someone from Maryland, USA on CW. As my radio receiver did not have the 14 MHz amateur band, I could not work on 20 meter. Tried my luck on 80 meters instead. We had plenty of space at home for an 80-meter antenna. I used to throw a string tied to a stone up to a coconut tree and pull up the 80-meter antenna, which was held between two coconut trees, which were there in plenty in the compound. I could work several local stations on 80 meter. I received my advanced grade license after my post-graduation and could get a 2-letter call sign VU2JO with the help of VU2SD and Sahar. Then again, due to tough schedules at work, I went into dormancy on amateur radio to come up in late 1990s with VHF on 2 meters. I had a handheld and a base station and used to work on the repeater located at Nelliyampati, Palakkad. A directional beam was given to me by VO2FWW Murali, which gave me access to the repeater. Still later, a repeater was installed at the Super Specialty Block, Government Medical College, Kozhikode, under the leadership of VU2JN. I could access this repeater easily as it was quite nearby. Now I have been in dormancy on ham radio for quite some time and wish to revive my hobby after retirement with more time to spare. Yesterday I had a phone contact with VU2JOS Jose, my old ham friend, who has also encouraged me to come back on the air. I hope I'll be able to sooner or later.